tensions in the South China Sea are rising once again. But this time, a new security pact is taking shape, one that could reshape the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. Australia and the Philippines are moving closer to a landmark defense agreement. The question is, will this pact hold the line against Beijing, or will it provoke a new wave of escalation? Welcome to GeoFrontline, where today we investigate how a deal between Manila and Canberra could redefine the front lines of the Pacific. The Philippines has been on the razor's edge of confrontation with China for years. Chinese Coast Guard ships and maritime militia have harassed Filipino fishermen, blocked supply runs, and even rammed vessels in disputed waters. For Manila, the South China Sea isn't just about maps and claims. It's about survival, sovereignty, and security. Enter Australia. Once considered a distant player in these disputes, Canberra has transformed into a key Indo-Pacific security partner. With its UK-US deal alongside the United States and the UK, Australia is rapidly upgrading its military posture. And now, it's looking to extend that umbrella of cooperation to the Philippines. But what exactly is being negotiated? Reports confirm that Australia and the Philippines are preparing to sign a defense pact by 2026. This agreement will allow both nations to deepen military exercises, intelligence sharing, and joint planning. Most importantly, it will expand the use of Philippine bases by Australian forces. 5 key bases have already been identified, some located perilously close to the South China Sea flashpoints. That's where the suspense kicks in. Does this mean Australian troops, aircraft, or even warships will soon be stationed right on China's doorstep? For Beijing, the optics are alarming. Chinese state media has already denounced this developing pact as provocative, accusing Washington of using allies like Australia and the Philippines to encircle China. And they're not wrong about US involvement, because behind this deal stands America's strategic blueprint. Washington has long sought to strengthen the lattice of alliances in Asia, building not just bilateral ties, but interconnected networks among allies. The US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty already binds Manila and Washington. Australia is tied to the US through ANZUS and AUKUS, by linking Canberra and Manila directly. A trilateral security triangle forms, creating a more resilient deterrent. But here's the question. Will this pact actually make the Philippines safer? Critics argue that Manila could become even more of a frontline target. If Australian forces are stationed on Philippine soil, Beijing might see those bases as fair game in any confrontation. In other words, the Philippines gains deterrence, but also risk. Supporters counter that the risk already exists. China's island building, naval buildup, and aggressive tactics have already placed the Philippines in danger. By drawing in Australia, Manila sends a powerful message. The Philippines is not alone, and any attack on its forces could trigger a broader allied response. So where does the US fit in? Make no mistake, Washington is watching this pact closely. With new American access to bases in northern Luzon, just a short flight from Taiwan, the US is building an arc of presence across the first island chain. If Australia locks in its deal with the Philippines, that arc becomes even stronger. And for President Trump's administration, this pact is another example of allies stepping up to share the burden of Indo-Pacific defense. But let's not overlook the domestic angle. For Philippine President Marcos Jr., this agreement is a bold gamble. He faces domestic critics who accuse him of dragging the Philippines into great power conflict. Yet Marcos knows his country is too exposed to stand alone. Partnering with Australia provides both security and diplomatic cover, an insurance policy against being isolated in the face of Beijing's pressure. Australia, for its part, also takes a risk by extending its defense commitments to the Philippines. Canberra signals that it is ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with Manila if China pushes too far. That's a dramatic expansion of Australia's role, and one that will demand resources, strategy, and political will. So what happens next? Between now and 2026, the two nations will expand joint drills. Exercises like Alan, a recent showcase of combined naval power, will become more frequent, larger, and more sophisticated. Bases across the Philippines will be upgraded with new runways, fuel depots, and logistics hubs, ensuring Allied forces can deploy quickly in a crisis. By the time the Defense Pact is formally signed, the Philippines and Australia may already be operating as de facto allies. The treaty will simply formalize a partnership that has been built step by step, drill by drill, base by base. And that leads us to the ultimate suspense. Will China back down in the face of this growing web of alliances? Or will it lash out even harder to test their resolve? History suggests Beijing won't sit quietly. More maritime clashes, more aggressive Coast Guard actions, and more gray zone pressure are almost certain. The real test will come when one of those incidents escalates beyond control. In that moment, the Philippines-Australia Pact will be put to the test, and the world will see whether Allied deterrence can hold. Until then, one thing is clear. The Indo-Pacific is no longer just about US-China rivalry. It is about a coalition of nations, large and small, coming together to defend the principles of freedom of navigation, sovereignty, and security. And with the Philippines and Australia forging this new bond, the balance of power in Asia is shifting once again. This is GeoFrontline. Stay tuned, stay informed, and stay ahead.